Hi, my name is Johanna and I'm a coach and advanced conversational hypnotherapist, and I specialise in postpartum mental health. Yesterday, my family and I went to a local fun fair, and I got chatting to a dad who talked about his teenage sons, and one of his sons brought him to the fun fair and was also coming to pick up him and his wife, and how wonderful it is that that they do this, and how life really does get easier when they go toward adulthood, because I was only chasing around my kids there until my husband took over for a bit, took him to a ride. So I finally got chatting to someone. And then another mum with a very, very young child, she joined into the conversation as well. And she remarked that she basically couldn't wait for her kids or her child to be at that age, because she really missed her old life, and she really missed going to events such as this fun fair, this annual fancy fair thing that we were at. And she said things like going out to these sort of things, it just aren't fun anymore since she's had kids. And then the dad remarked that, you'd better enjoy the kids when they're still young, because, time flies fast and they grow up so quickly. And he even went as far as saying that he would have gladly turned back the clock to where his kids were still jumping on him and hugging and kissing him at that young age, because, teenagers aren't too keen on showing that kind of affection anymore at one point. And he says he really misses this. But the young mum, she made it abundantly clear to us that she genuinely missed her old life and her old self, basically. And she was feeling really depressed about it. And she went home not long after that, and she said, I just want to go home and mourn my own life, because going to fairs like this, it just really sort of shows me, reiterates that I'm just not enjoying these things anymore. My life has really changed. And that sort of inspired me to use that as a subject for the video that I'm making today, because it is fairly common. It's a fairly common thing that I hear from both mums and dads, that they feel sort of like a ball and a chain attached to them after becoming parents. Not all of them, obviously, but it is something that I hear. I have been hearing more and more recently for some reason in my practice. And usually when we start talking about the subject, when asked, then they mostly answer that they weren't properly mentally prepared for that amount of impact it would have on their life, even though for most of them it was a very conscious decision to become a parent. So since you're watching this video today, I probably don't have to explain to you that the transition into motherhood or parenthood, fatherhood, whatever, the transition brings significant changes and also a lot of challenges, and some for which you can prepare and some for which you just simply cannot prepare. There's just no way of knowing how you're going to react to a situation until you're in it. But it really does look like that aspect that is often overlooked is the loss of your old self, your old life. And when you get into conversation with mums and dads about the topic, and they all seem to come to, well, if I can say that, a sort of general conclusion that yes, it really feels like mourning of their old life, their pre-children life, their pre-child life. And you may recognize this feeling of missing and even mourning. So this can become quite sort of an emotional process, and for some it may even become so big that it has a huge impact on their mental well-being. And for some even to the extent that it becomes a contributor to postpartum mental health issues. And postpartum mental health issues can potentially develop into bigger things like postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, OCD, intrusive thoughts, even dissociation. And once you start entering, that twilight zone of mental health decline, and that can really start affecting many other areas of your life, like your social life, your relationships, and it may even start to affect the bond with your child or with your children. And there may be sort of a multi-layered effect to a mourning process of, the pre-motherhood or the pre-parenthood life. And for this video, I'd sort of like to discuss some of these potential layers. So before you had children, you may have experienced a sense of, freedom, independence. And you basically had your own identity, your own self. And all these things may have become temporarily disrupted after becoming a mum or becoming a dad. Because let's not exclude men from this, as they can too become victim to postpartum mental health struggles. So you've become the biggest and the most important pillar of your little baby's life. And, without you carrying that responsibility of nurturing and raising at all times, most days 24/7, round the clock, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you are forming their lives in almost every aspect for, at least the next, 15 to 20 years. And that's quite overwhelming. That's a huge, huge role to play. And we all know that it can be a very emotionally challenging time for many different reasons, all 15 to 20 of these years. And putting in all that, all that blood, sweat and tears and all that time, it means that you have to give up something from yourself, logically, And that something may have been really, really nice, that life before becoming a parent may have been a wonderful life. Social life was great, and most of us chose to give that up, or give it up in part, or so we thought, because this new life event, this new phase of life that we decided to enter when deciding to try and become pregnant, the expectation was that it would be even more fulfilling. It would be the next stage of your life, sort of a next phase to your life. Had you overlooked the fact that, by creating this little person, that you are giving up many things that you used to love, or that they changed so significantly that you can't enjoy them anymore? Or had you maybe hoped that it would be something that you would really sort of easily be able to combine with your previous lifestyle? And now that you're sort of starting to realize that it may take a while, if ever, for the old life to return, that's a hard thing to process. And when something or someone never returns, then we logically go through a process of missing something or someone, and that can be sort of translated into mourning, a mourning process. So mourning a life that you once knew. It's very, very important to acknowledge is that this mourning process that you are now in, it really is pretty normal. And it certainly doesn't diminish you as a parent, the love that you have for your child. What it actually does do is it highlights the fact that you are very capable of loving things in life, loving people in life. You simply love many aspects of your life. And additionally, it also highlights, sort of the complexity of this life-altering journey that you decided to go on by having a baby. Now, it's both love and sadness wrapped up in this little baby bundle of joy. And these sort of conflicting emotions, they can be really confusing, especially when you're expecting to feel on top of the world about becoming a mum and loving your child, but then at the same time you have all these overwhelming emotions that you weren't expecting of missing something or even mourning something, and it seems to not really fit into that world that you were expecting to create, and maybe you didn't see that coming. So you can really prepare yourself for motherhood as much as you like, but if this sort of sad mourning feeling comes lurking around the corner, and it comes lurking around the corner unexpectedly, then that can do a real number on your postpartum mental health. When you're already sort of, what's the word, fragile, maybe a bit of a nasty word, but when you're already maybe not in the best place because things are overwhelming, and which then potentially becomes a contributor to that postpartum mental health decline, or these struggles. And often it's sort of the suddenness in the shift in identity and also the lifestyle, again, coupled with all these things like hormonal changes, sleep deprivation, and that pressure also of taking care of your wee baby that you are still, getting to know and you can't really communicate with. And that in itself can also be overwhelming. Even the strongest of individuals can feel overwhelmed by this. And recognizing this and addressing these emotional challenges, that is probably the most crucial thing to support your mental health, to speak about it, to be open about it. And it's very important to acknowledge it so you can create a healthier environment for both you and your young family. An open and honest environment. And that may require some additional help. Maybe you need some therapy. There's no shame in that if you can't manage it for yourself. There can only be winners if you acknowledge it and if you get the help that you need to overcome it. There can only be losers if you decide to keep it to yourself and everything starts to go downhill from there. Because then it will start eating away at you and at your mental well-being, and that's going to have a negative, or that can potentially have a huge negative snowball effect on you and your family. And I know that for some people it's really hard to accept help. For some it's difficult to even find the time in a busy schedule where you're hanging on to everything pre-pregnancy and trying to make it work by combining everything that comes post-pregnancy. Because, the demands of parenting, they are high, let alone if you try to squeeze your old life activities in it as well. So, becoming a parent, that often leads to a decrease in available time for social activities and for maintaining friendship. And that is, for some, a very unfortunate fact. I've heard numerous mums and dads' stories about really feeling isolated, lonely, and even bored. I did a video about bore out. Some people think they go into mummy burnout, but it actually looks more like bore out. And one of the reasons they felt that way was because their childless friends, they don't understand them, and they are looked upon or frowned upon, or engaging in activities that they sort of used to enjoy is now simply has become an exhausting task. And that's some effects it may have. Well, yeah, there's a big chance that has effects on your social life. But you're sort of looking closer to home, then the dynamics within, for example, romantic relationships, they can also shift. And your main focus is no longer each other, but there's that wee addition that sucks up a lot of time and energy and emotions. Having to share that, or what I have heard previously in my practice, some partners even feel that having to compete with a baby for their partner's attention, that can do strange things to a relationship as well. When you are so used to being a unit together, and all of a sudden there's this third person that comes joining you, and that takes up a lot of time and energy. And that can cause negative emotions at a time when energy levels may be running low due to, said sleep deprivation. And that can make it even harder to shift them back to the happy feelings. So when you feel this is happening within your relationship, again, I would advise you to take that first step of acknowledging it. Talk about your partner with this and try and do that without judgment, because you're both in a position that you don't want to necessarily be in, that you maybe weren't expecting to be in. So, whether you are going through these emotions or whether your partner is going through these emotions, try to validate them, as you now know that they may actually be really going through a mourning process, and mourning a loss that's never nice for no one. So listen to each other and try to understand and validate each other's point of view. Even if you can't properly see the other person's point of view, try to not invalidate it, try to acknowledge it, because together you can then come up with strategies to maintain and nurture that relationship. And that's not only for your sake, it's also for your partner's sake and for your baby's sake, for your family's sake. And I also mention your baby especially because it's not completely unusual to find something or someone to blame, and some parents tend to, at a conscious level, but very often at an unconscious level, they blame their children. Since they came into the world, things have started to change for the worse, or so it feels to them. That may start to create a barrier between the mother and child bond, or the father and child bond. Or you may be wishing their life away, like the example I gave at the start of this video. And whether we experience it consciously or unconsciously, that can cause lots of different feelings, like maybe guilt or annoyance or whatever, and especially guilty feelings of not fully embracing motherhood struggling, or guilt because you can't motivate and commit yourself fully to adjust to this new role of being a mom or dad. And again, recognition of these emotions, even though they're not the ones that you want to verbalize out loud, again, to verbalize them, that is the very, very first step into trying to come up with solutions, and trying to come up with a next step so you can repair this. So I hope this video will inspire you to take a good look at yourself and maybe your partner and your friendship. Take a good look at it and admit to yourself, is this what's happening? Are you mourning your old life? Are you sad about something? And again, no judgment or shame. It can be part of your motherhood or fatherhood journey, and you're not alone in that. But acknowledging it, that's a very, very first and extremely important step to take. And then the next step, and that would be to open up about it, seek support. Because by not doing this, by not doing this, you're not giving parenthood a proper chance. And it can really prove to become the game changer in developing a healthy, loving bond with your children. If you open up about your struggles, there's absolutely no shame in building a healthy relationship with them, whilst also honouring the fact that you're missing something. Basically what you're doing is really admitting and honouring your own personal emotional needs. And what a great example that is to your children, that you are able to do that and you're able to show them that, which is something wonderful for them to learn for their future. Consider it part of self-care at a time when you have to give up some things that you used to really love. It's a next step. It's sort of an advanced step. So you get a chance to rediscover yourself, to reinvent yourself. Think of all the things that you leave behind that you're not too bothered about, and replace them with things that you want. Or give yourself permission to hand in some things that you will miss and replace them with some new fun stuff that would really enhance your new life role as a mum or a dad. Try and get a new hobby that fits in with your new role in parenthood. New interests, new self-care routines, pursue new goals. Honour and nurture your new identity, because it can be found, and ultimately it will benefit your mental health as well as the bond with your partner and your baby. So this journey that you've entered, becoming a mum, becoming a dad, there's no two ways around it. It's a huge transformation, and at times it will be immensely complex for many reasons, and especially in that fast-paced world that we live in, where everyone and everything is expecting so much of each other. It's okay to, and it's even logical, to mourn your old life, or to mourn at least parts of that, of your old pre-baby self. It's a natural and logical process. And what's essential is to address the impact it has on you, on your mental well-being, and the impact it has on your social life, on your relationships, on your bonding with your kids. Acknowledge them, recognize the challenges, and start implementing strategies to overcome them. You know, you can then sort of start to embrace that new role that you've been given, and at the same time also honour your own emotional needs. And remember, you are not alone, and there is support available to help navigate this beautiful and very challenging journey. I hope this video helps. Take care.